The Political Studies Association publishes a range of journals and a magazine. These are all displayed here in front of you. And we found out last year at the conference in Belfast that it's a really useful opportunity for people who are perhaps starting out, thinking about submitting their first paper, or looking for an alternative forum in which to submit a paper, to have this opportunity to ask face-to-face some very burning questions that you might have, but also to hear from the different editorial teams what it is that they're looking for in a paper and how you can be successful in the submission process. So we have the editors of the different publications on my left, and the format will be that I will introduce each one who will talk for a short time about the publication for which they're responsible, and we'll take a couple of specific questions at that point as well. And then once everybody has given their presentation, the questions will be opened up more generally to anything else that you would like to know or ask. So the first editor I'd like to introduce is Professor Kees van der Eyck. Kees is one of the 4 lead editors for political studies, which, as I say, is currently based in Nottingham. And Kees will also talk about the sister journal, which is Political Studies Review, which has its own lead editor, Dr. Mark Wenman, but unfortunately he can't be here today. Kees?
Thank you. I think that goes better. Well, maybe first of all, a little bit about the difference between the two journals. We got Political Studies on the one hand, and Political Studies Review on the other hand. And one thing is, of course, obvious: Political Studies Review carries the book reviews, but it also carries articles. Some of those are review articles, which combine reviews about a series of books into one document, to put it that way. But that's not all. It also has a number of other articles. And so to some extent you might wonder, what's the differentiation between political studies and political studies review? Well, there's one difference, is the length that's allowed. In political studies we want documents not longer than 9,000 words. In political studies review, no longer than 6,000 words. So in general are shorter articles. But we also aim them to have a somewhat different character. With political studies review, more articles that provide academically informed opinion about politics and political science, and articles that make the reader aware of new developments in data, methods, approaches, and so on. Whereas in political studies, we hope to focus more on primary research and the report of that, where that research might be theoretical, conceptual, or empirical. So that's approximately the distinction. And of course, as always, these distinctions are not watertight compartments. There is of course some crossover, but I hope it is informative nonetheless. Maybe a little bit about some data. Not bore you very much with that, but to give an impression of what we're dealing with. Political Studies published last year 52 articles, Political Studies Review 20, plus 354 reviews. So there are more articles in Political Studies. Those 52 have, of course, to be compared with something. Now, of course, the articles that were published in 52 were not all submitted in 2012, were not all submitted in 2012. But in that year we received 377 submissions, so slightly more than one per day, and the number of submissions for political studies was 52. That is quite a rise, not so much compared to 2011, but compared to 2010 and before. We have, for the period leading up through 2010, and comparing with that, a jump of more than a third in submissions. What happens with them? Well, some get accepted, some get an advice to be revised, and some are rejected. What's the rejection rate? Well, it depends a little bit how you count, because we have, of course, always moving windows. an article which is submitted in a year doesn't get totally finished in that year, that might be carrying over to the next year. But a low percentage would be 66, and a high percentage, if we disregard those which are still pending, would be 79. So somewhere between there is the average rejection rate. That might seem high from some perspective, it might seem low from low perspective. We don't aim necessarily to have a high rejection rate, but we do have a limitation in terms of the number of articles that we can place, which is about 52 or something around there. Although we do something about it, and I will tell you something about it in a minute. For the very great majority, way over 80%, it takes less than 3 months before a decision is made after submission, and after acceptance it takes 9 to 12 months before that article has been produced. That's a long time. We aim to reduce that, but we are dealing with a backlog and a copy bank which is considerable. We are gaining, but that is not something that can be done overnight. In 2013, and if you are subscribed to Political Studies, you might have noticed this, there has been an additional issue, which is an online issue, which contains 12 additional articles in addition to the printed ones, and that is a version which is freely downloadable for all during 2013. So if you haven't done yet so, and you think it's material of interest, please do download them and you can use them for eternity. And this is of course extra on top of the 52 or so articles that we can publish in print. A little bit about the process. Of course, articles that are submitted go into review, but they don't all go into review. Some are desk rejected, as we call it. And that's mainly when the editors, and this is something which is leading to consultations within the editorial team, do not see much of a potential of that article in terms of making a rigorous and original contribution. But otherwise, it goes into review, and at the end, you get a decision. So, finally, some observations from my perspective as editor, or our perspective as editors. Why do we reject articles, and why is the rejection rate sometimes seen as high? Well, many of the articles that are rejected don't have really a clear question, sometimes not a question at all. More importantly, many of them do not care to elaborate for the reader why the question that they address is of any interest at all. We are very flexible in this respect. We don't mind that things are about a narrow niche in the discipline, but somebody, that's the author, has to tell us and the reader why we should care. It should not only be of interest to you, but to all of us. And so even though the rejection rate seems high, to some extent this is a matter that is more appearance than reality. If you do your homework, if you think in terms of a reader who has to be told why it's of interest what you're doing, and if you adhere to normal professional standards of reporting, you will be not only reviewed, but you have a good chance of being accepted at some time. But if you don't care about that, yes, then rejection is the most likely fate. So you got it in your own hands, and please keep those submissions coming.
Thank you very much. Any quick question before we move on to the next journal? Yes?
My question is just very simple. You have a particular area of focus regarding publications in the journal?
Do we have a particular area
Area
of
of
focus?
focus, yes. When it comes to
Do we have a particular area of focus
Yes.
regarding submission?
yes.
No, the journal is a
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling sabotaged. the journal is a general political science journal which does not have either focus in terms of subdisciplines or in regional areas. So if you look at submissions and articles that have been published, they can have a focus on Europe, on Africa, on Asia, on Latin America. They might be comparative across all of them. They might sometimes focus on a small region in one of those areas, as long as the author tells us why that is of crucial interest to know.
Thank you very much. The next editor I'd like to call upon is Peter Geoghegan, who is the editor of Here's the saboteur.
Oh my word. I think that's such an old term.
You may have this.
Yes, that's okay. Yes, that's a lot better, hopefully. Yes. Okay, we'll give it a moment. I apologise for sabotaging the lead editor. Hi, my name is Peter Geoghegan and I'm the editor of Political Insight, which is the PSA's magazine. As you might notice, the Political Insight is obviously looks very different to the other journals, the other PSA journals, and that's because this is crazy. That's because the magazine is obviously it's a different offering to the other PSA journals. And one of the features of the magazine is quite different. Is the length of our articles, as opposed to a traditional academic journal where you're talking 6,000 to 9,000 words. Our articles are generally kind of 1,300 to 2,200 words. Okay, I think maybe that's sort of. So our magazine features much shorter articles, and most of the articles in the magazine are research and comment, but with an emphasis on the former, on research. Very much, we look upon.
I think someone's coming.
Try speaking without the microphone. Is that okay? We're all quite close. Okay. Is this working a bit better?
Yes.
Okay, we'll start again. Hello, my name is Peter Geoghegan, and I'm the editor. It's for the camera. Basically, Political Insight magazine it's the PSA magazine offering, as opposed to traditional journals. It features much shorter articles, and the emphasis in the magazine very much is on fresh research. I'm very interested in new research that's coming out. A lot of the time, the latest issue features new work by James Sloan on youth participation in politics. We're very research driven. We're very looking for new research that's topical, that's fresh, that's authoritative, and that's also written in a style that's quite different to traditional academic journals. I think if you think about Political Insight, or if you want to write for Political Insight, the way to think about it is how would you write for a magazine or a broadsheet newspaper. So if I was an academic thinking I would like to write a piece for Political Insight, I would think what's important about my research, what's interesting about my research, what's fresh and what's new about my research, and why is my research of interest beyond just kind of academic debates, beyond debates within the discipline or within my sub-discipline. So that's very much how and that's what I look for when I'm looking for articles to feature in the magazine. Again, because we're not a peer-reviewed journal, which I think some people do mistake for a peer-reviewed journal. We're not a peer-reviewed journal. So the submission process for Political Insight is very different to the submission process for another PSA journal. We don't have a bespoke online submission process. And how I prefer to start off the process of commissioning pieces is to receive emails from potential authors, basically pitching their ideas. You pitch your idea in a couple of paragraphs, say what's the idea you have for the magazine, why would it be interesting, rather than sending me, say, 4,000 words, I've written this, here you go, which does happen, and unfortunately I do have to tell you that submit that, but that's not what the magazine is about. And I often can have a conversation then about what you might want to submit. But in the first instance, if you're looking to submit to Political Insight, an email to me just outlining who you are and what your idea is in a few paragraphs and why it's of interest to our readers is often the best way to start the process. And the commissioning process often will work like that. An author will contact me and we have a discussion about what kind of piece I think would work for the magazine. Often we'll have quite a detailed discussion about what might be in the piece, the submission process. We publish 3 times a year. We publish in March, April, September and December. So often it's also good to think about when the magazine will be commissioned. And often I'll be commissioning 6 months, 3 to 6 months ahead of the next issue. So now, if you'd be interested in publishing in September, now is the time to be thinking about contacting Political Insight with an idea. And that's often the way the magazine works, because we want to be fresh and topical. And having a magazine format allows us to kind of, in a sense, to react to agendas that are happening elsewhere. So, if you're doing a piece of research, you think it's very newsworthy, something's happening, maybe it's worth thinking about contacting Political Insight. Again, when it comes to likelihood of acceptance, again, we're different to a traditional journal. It's more a case, once we're in conversation and the commissioning process starts, I might say, yes, I'm this in theory, I'd like to see a draft. That's often how it would work. And then at that stage, we kind of discuss what might happen, whether we go forward with the piece. Most pieces that I say, yes, I'm interested in, do actually get to print eventually. Sometimes with a bit of kind of discussion and comment with the reader. I'm very much a believer that Political Insight is a place where political scientists can publish in a form that's very much what we want to be doing in terms of impact. It's a similar format that you would have in a magazine or a newspaper, but maybe it's an easier opportunity to kind of start in publishing in that way. So again, very recently a journalist contacted me asking me for more information about the magazine. He asked me, is the magazine technical or is it waffle? And he said, and I said to him, technical is really where we're at, to be honest. Waffle is not where we're at. What we want is that kind of authoritative, topical content that I think lots of PSA members are able to provide. I think it's a great place to publish, but it's also about thinking about what your work is. And it's a bit like Casey said, why is your work important? Why is it interesting? And what do you bring to it that maybe somebody else doesn't? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Is there any immediate question from the audience to do with Political Insight? Or we'll leave those till later. And moving on, Alistair Clark, one of the lead editors on British Journal of Politics and International Relations, BJPIR.
I'm talking through the comedy microphone. Can everyone hear me? Right, can everyone hear me now? Yeah. Yes, good, right. Thank you, Renee. My name is Alistair Clark from British Journal of Politics and International Relations. In many ways we're an omnibus journal as well, but we also have a specific function, which is not just to look at the best of political science and the best of political science on Britain, but also to specifically look at Britain's place in the world and develop an international relations angle for the Political Studies Association in what we cover. So in that sense, we have a specific remit as well as being just a broad omnibus journal. And we launched in 2000, I think it is, we're actually in volume 14. We're run by a team which is situated at Queen's University in Belfast, but also with support from myself at Newcastle and a colleague at St Andrews as well. We're a broad-based team, so we cover pretty much all areas of political science and international relations, which I think gives us a great strength when we come to review articles and so on. Okay. We're a well-ranked journal as well in ISI, as is Political Studies Review, and increasingly politics as well. So in that case, if you're looking to submit to somewhere that's going to get your article noticed, then BJPIR and the other PSA journals are good places to submit. In terms of process and so on, essentially our word limit is around about 8,000 words. Okay. We publish roughly about 40 articles a year. Of course, we have far more submissions than that. We've probably got an acceptance rate of roughly about 40%, maybe slightly lower than that, but roughly about that. When we have articles accepted, it's not necessarily the case that you've got to wait a long time until the article is actually published. It may not actually appear in a hard copy issue, but it's published online with a digital object identifier, largely the minute it's gone through the page setting process. So in that regard, you can be assured that whatever you publish with us is actually going to be publicly available as soon as possible. In terms of what we cover, we have an editorial statement which is online that you can have a look at. As I say, the best of politics on Britain, best of political science on Britain, being abroad in this journal. There were some specific themes that we did actually want to address when we took over the journal, which were to do with the changing nature of the British state, recognising that there are changes happening both above the level of the nation state, but also below, things such as devolution and these sorts of things. So actually looking at these particular things. One thing that we did specifically set out to do was deal with the things to do with the impact of political science on broader debates and political life and so on. And to that end, we have a special section which is entitled Policy Matters, which is a slightly shorter article, about 5,000 words or so, specifically focused at a policy problem. We've had a couple of pieces published in this series. A fairly important one by Paul Whiteley, the relationship between higher education and economic development, which was published just towards the end of last year, and be followed up in the PSA's blog shortly. Another one dealing with the global financial crisis about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So if you're interested in that sort of policy impact angle, please get in touch with us. We're more than happy to receive suggestions for that, encourage you through that particular process. We also have, we've talked a little about submission processes, but we do have an online submission process. All the journals have this. If something comes through to BJPIR as a submission, very much the same as Case has mentioned, the editors will have a look at it, we'll look and see if it's something that's suitable for the journal in the first instance. On a small number of occasions, things are what we call desk rejected. In other words, we just go back to the author and say, well, it's not really suitable. Now, typically, this is when someone, as Case mentioned, has not really done research into the journal, but maybe peg this for the kind of journal that we want. So, I'd echo that comment. Do research about the journal and the kinds of things that we've been covering. Assuming that you get through that particular phase, we'll send your article out to review. Every article we send out to review goes out to 3 reviewers. Okay, now, range of potential decisions from reject through to revising, resubmit, through to immediate acceptance. Immediate acceptance, on the whole, just does not happen. Okay, you're more than likely to get some form of revise and resubmit. Okay. When you do that, if you submit to us, you get that. Take the referee's comments seriously. Okay, because we have rejected articles which have been revised and resubmitted and actually have ignored what the editors and the referees have actually told them. Okay, so don't hinder yourself in your dealings with the journal, I think is what I would say. Also, 2 last things just to finish. In relation to that, make sure you also don't hinder yourself by writing articles that are far too long for the journal or that don't pay attention to the house style. Okay, this is something that we quite regularly get pieces that don't come in relation to the house style. And listen to what, as I say, the editors and referees give you. So many thanks, and we hope to see some of your submissions with us in the not too distant future.
Thank you very much. Can I reiterate that about the house style, because there are submissions to political studies that temporarily unsubmitted because they're so long, and then the author will look right back and say, well, what should the length be? Well, if they don't know that, they've not been reading anything about how to prepare the article for submission in the first place, so do yourselves a favour. Are there any immediate questions to Alistair about BJPIR submissions? Yes?
I suppose this is a general question. I'm also an editor, and I'm interested in the
Okay, so the question was, what are the methods used for expanding the pool of reviewers?
I'm not sure the pool of reviewers is expanding. I think if anything, it's probably shrinking. Largely, we will sometimes take advice. One of the good things about our team is we're actually so broad, and we can actually sort of start to call advice from other areas. But on the whole, it can actually be quite difficult to get people to review in the first place. Largely by going to first names and sometimes having to follow up others who happen to know someone who's active in that area and so on and so forth. I mean, it can be difficult. It's more difficult in what we call perhaps interdisciplinary areas. And that's partly where the benefit of having such a large editorial team actually comes in, because we do span a whole range of different areas. So it's expanding. I'm not sure we necessarily manage to do that. That is difficult. If anyone knows what the secret to doing that is, please share.
Thank you very much. We'll take some more questions shortly at the end, but before so I'd like to introduce Martin Coward, who is editor of Politics.
Thank you. Politics, for those of you who don't know, is this elegant sort of crimson-coloured publication. I think a bit like the other, like political studies and like BJPIR, we're a pluralist journal. We are based at Newcastle, but we actively encourage all methods, all theories, all subdisciplines, all empirical focuses. We have no particular remit like BJPIR on Britain, or so we're very much, we aim to publish original work from the breadth of the discipline. We are actively encouraging submissions on learning and teaching in politics at the moment as well, and aiming to increase the presence of research-led reflection on learning and teaching. The Politics operates slightly different word lengths to both political studies and BJPIR. We have two word lengths. Pieces can either be 4,000 words or 6,000 words. Increasingly, submissions are tending towards 6,000 words. 6,000 words is referable, and so I'm unsurprised that more and more of our submissions are coming in at that length. But 4,000 words is also very suitable for initial research findings as well. Pieces that you might want to publish prior to putting together a long 8,000-9,000 word exposition. We are, as Alistair said, ISI ranked now, so we're a very strong outlet in terms of getting getting your work out and recognised and so on. We also publish special sections, special issues. We're always looking for, we've solicited some in the past. We've one on resilience, which will come out soon, and probably one on networking and sort of cyber politics, which will probably come out next year. But we're always looking for proposals, so if you have an idea for collecting together a group of papers that have a common theme, do approach us. Our submission process is the route through Scholar One. It's an automated system. I would say a couple of things. We do operate like political studies and BJPIR, we do operate a desk reject policy, and the most common reasons are it's not the right length, or it hasn't followed the house style, or you've misunderstood what the journal is for, right? In that respect, the most common misunderstanding about the journal is we publish research-led findings. They may be initial findings, but they're research-led. And they're original, so it's not an outlet for things like op-ed pieces or commentary or opinion or that kind of thing. We aim to provide a quick review process. In fact, I would probably go as far to say that we aim for pieces that for pieces that get published for them to have around 6 to 9 month period between submission and actual publication. So I think we're pretty quick in that regard. Typically we will get review done within 45 to 50 days, so between 9 and 10 weeks, which really returns a decision to you very quickly. So if you make it through the kind of initial consideration by editors, really you can expect something back within sort of 3 months, outlining what to do. The majority of our decisions are revise and resubmit or minor correction decisions, but a lot of those revisions authors do them, and at that stage, a fair number do go through to publication. I think we have a total of a sort of 20% across all submissions, a 20% publication rate, but that probably doesn't really reflect the way that it works. Everything that is original and that comes in and that authors are willing to work on will probably make its way through the system at some point. The other thing I would also say is that we aim to provide a positive experience for even those who don't get through, and we aim to provide fairly extensive feedback, and I think that's one of the things we pride ourselves on as editors, that even if you end up getting rejected, we hope that we can provide pointers to how the piece could be strengthened in the long run. And then the final thing is, alongside the fact that it's a PSA journal, it goes to over 3,500 subscribers, as in institutional subscribers, so it's got very wide dissemination. We also aim to work for you to publicise your piece. It's not sort of publicise it and then that's our job done. We aim to kind of raise the profile of your piece. At the moment, we're sending pieces out to scholars who are identified as people who might be interested in that work and might want to read it and might want to engage with it. We will also be increasingly over the next year publicising work over social media channels and so on, with the aim of getting the profile and making it worthwhile for authors to publish in politics, making it, giving them exposure.
Thank you very much. Are there any specific questions before we open it up more generally, just about publishing in politics?
Hi. About research-led writing on teaching, what would it have to do to qualify as being research-led?
Can I just repeat that for the benefit of everybody? The question was, for research-led writing on teaching, what would it have to do to qualify as being research-led?
In general, there's one type of article that isn't research-led, and that's effectively how to do a particular kind of teaching. We don't tend to. We see quite a lot of that, but we're not interested in publishing that because essentially we think that there's already existing literature on that. The ones that tend to get published tend to do one of or both of two things. Either they, by being research-led, they both embed themselves in and critically reflect on pedagogical literature, right? So questions about how students